Adult Swim has brought us a thought-provoking animated series, which you can now stream season 1 on Max. Let's talk about common side effects. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my TV review for Common Side Effects. This aired weekly on Adult Swim earlier this year. You can now stream season 1 in its entirety on Max, and there is a second season in the works. That has been given the green light, so they are working on that now. And this comes to us partially from Mike Judge and Greg Daniels, the people who brought us King of the Hill. And Mike Judge, of course, has brought us things like Idiocracy, Beavis and Butthead, Office Space. But the show itself was created by Joseph Bennett and Steve Healy, or Helly. And we'll talk about all of this here in just a second and give you my thoughts on it. But first, let me welcome you back to Dan Reviews It. If you are a subscriber for the channel already, thank you so much for that. Love it when you guys return to check out my content. But if you're not, please consider subscribing and click that notification bell too, so you get the alerts for all my new videos. And of course, liking or commenting or sharing on your socials helps the channel out tremendously as well. All right, so Steve Healy is the writer here and co-creator of this show, Common Side Effects, but he has his roots in animation. He has been an associate producer for American Dad, and he also worked on things like The Office and 30 Rock, so he certainly has a flair for sort of off-the-wall type comedy. And this is something I did not expect from Adult Swim. This is a lot more thought-provoking, a lot more down to earth, I guess, even though there's certainly some fantastical things happening. But I think, you know, for Adult Swim, this is a fairly grounded series. And so the premise basically is that these two high school friends, Marshall and Frances, Marshall voiced by Dave King, Frances voiced by Emily Pendergast, or Pendergast rather, they reconnect after Marshall discovers this blue angel mushroom, which is a mushroom with healing powers that can apparently cure all illnesses. And in the process, they also uncover a conspiracy involving a pharmaceuticals company that Frances actually was working for. And there's stuff with the DEA here. They're kind of on the lookout for Marshall. He's kind of on the run. And we have the agents from the DEA voiced by Joseph Lee Anderson and Martha Kelly. And Rick Kruger is voiced by Mike Judge, who is the chief executive officer of this pharmaceutical company. And Frances is his assistant. So, first of all, great to hear Mike Judge's voice again. Obviously, we will hear him, as Hank Hill, and I think he does a couple of voices for the King of the Hill revival that is coming, I think, in the fall. I think we're not far off from that. But, of course, he's had some acting gigs as well, in front of the camera. He was the restaurant manager in Office Space, and I think he pops up in pretty much all of his movies, at least somewhere. But, in any event, great to hear his voice again. And Martha Kelly, I've been watching Baskets with her. That's the live action show with Louis Anderson and Zach Galifianakis, and she is a part of that. So I've been enjoying those episodes. I haven't seen that show before. But she also did the lead voice for Carol at the End of the World on Netflix, which I rated very highly, very enthusiastically a couple of years ago when that was put on. So she's not really, doing much different with her voice as usual, but I like her inflections, and I like her style, so that is a treat. But she's more of a side character here. We're mainly focusing on, these friends that have reconnected, Marshall and Frances, and this mushroom that, he wants to kind of give people for free. This is, able to heal everything. We need to give this to the world. And of course, she is stuck sort of between two places because she wants to please her boss and, make millions and millions herself on selling this medicine. But she also, sees Marshall's perspective too. And so the two of them end up kind of embroiled in this, game of cat and mouse. with the DEA and her own boss and some other people that want to be involved with this. So look, like most things that Mike Judge is involved with, and I know, again, he didn't create this, he didn't necessarily write this, and I mentioned that Steve Healy, the co-creator, was the writer here. He is a writer in general, but he only actually wrote a handful of these episodes, 1, 2, 3, and he co-wrote the first one with the co-creator of the show. So there's, a few different writers in the mix and a lot of different directors in the mix too. I will say the animation is easily the worst part of this show. If you just kind of saw this as like a snapshot or an animation cell from this, you'd be like, oh wow, these are sort of ugly characters. I would not necessarily go seeking this show out. It doesn't look appealing. But I feel like, and I don't want to give them too much credit and say, oh, maybe that was all part of the plan. But I do think there is something to be said thematically for the animation because these are sort of ugly characters. Even the ones with good hearts, are not designed all that well. So it's almost like, well, the idea that humanity is ugly. Again, I don't want to assign too much credit to the animators here, but to me, it actually worked within the confines of the themes of this show. So as I was starting to say, a lot of the things that Mike Judge has his hand in is really holding a mirror up to society in a very outlandish and silly way. And that, dates back to Beavis and Butthead. But obviously, things like Idiocracy are, maybe a little too on the nose. But then you have, things like Office Space, with office politics and all that sort of thing, with this very skewed view, and something like Extract too, deals with things like OSHA requirements and a loveless marriage, and there are some sort of hidden truths among almost all of Mike Judge's shows and movies, and I think this falls in line with that as well. I can see why, even though he didn't create it or write it, I can see why he attached himself to it as a producer, because I feel like there are a lot of really intelligent things that this show has to say about human nature and about big business and big pharma and the scariness of something like dementia. The Frances character, her mother has dementia, and so that plays a minor role as well, and it makes her a believer in what Marshall is saying about the healing powers of this mushroom. There's a lot to dig through here. I think this is why it's a little surprising, to be honest. It came from Adult Swim, because I think it's a lot more layered than their typical shows. I binged all 10 episodes of this over 2 days, and I'm very excited to see what season 2 brings. The last episode is actually not my favorite. I don't think that, and I'm not going to give away spoilers, but I don't think it ended on a great note. And so I am glad that they're going to get a season 2, because it did have a finite ending. If there was no season 2, I don't think I would be like, oh, this is left on a cliffhanger or anything, but it was not the most satisfactory, because it did kind of end, and it makes sense because they didn't know if they were going to get multiple seasons out of this. But I'm glad that they are, because I'm excited to see what comes next for this. I leave Common Side Effects with an A-. You can check out all 10 episodes now streaming on Max. Thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It, and I will see you next time.